the deal that I'm least familiar with? It's the one with Shanghai Electric. What's that all about? Like, how does that fit into the story?
It's quite simple. Shanghai Electric bought 50% of NM Malta. And this introduced an element where any deal that the government needed NM Malta to be involved in, that included signing these kinds of bonkers agreements that bound Malta to pay an extortionate amount of money for energy over the long term, it had to have the support of Shanghai Electric. And this is where one of your favorite characters comes in, Cheng Chen. How did the people involved in these deals in Malta, Konrad Mizzi, Yorgen Fenech, convince Shanghai Electric that it had to get involved in these deals? It used Cheng Chen, who did not work for the government of China, was not an employee of Shanghai Electric, was not an employee of the government of Malta. He was an employee of a US firm called Accenture Consulting, actually of their Chinese office, that was formerly known as Anderson Consulting and have a long and rich history of being involved in corruption. Cheng Chen was the person who was used to convince the officials of Shanghai Electric that these kinds of deals that make no sense make sense. So he convinced Shanghai Electric that it made sense for NM Malta to buy the wind farm in Montenegro from an offshore shell company called Cifidex. He is the person who convinced Shanghai Electric that it made sense for NM Malta to sign off on these crazy deals, obliging it to pay an extortionate amount of money for gas and electricity.
So when it comes to the Montenegro deal, the Shanghai Electric also needs to approve that kind of deal, since they have 50% of the 50% of the company. Does it give them voting rights? Does it give them decisional power? How does that?
These decisions are supposed to be taken by NM Malta's board.
Right.
Now, because Shanghai Electric is a shareholder in NM Malta, it has representatives on the board of NM Malta. What the National Audit Office did in its investigation was criticize the board of NM Malta for its passive attitude. Sorry, actually not the NAO, it was NM Malta's internal auditor. It criticized the passive attitude of NM Malta's board, saying that it listened to one presentation from Cheng Chen, and on the basis of that one presentation, it signed off on the agreement to pay Cifidex 11 million euros for this wind farm that was actually worth 3 million.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because it's a bit more elaborate. Explain Cifidex. So, in basic terms, I forgot who bought the wind farm at 3 million and then sold it to us at 11 million. Break that down a second.
Imagine, you have a friend who needs a car, and you tell your friend, look, you should really buy this car. It's 3 years old. It's in really great condition. But you have to buy it from this guy. So you can't just go out and look for that specific model of car from any seller you find and shop around for prices. No, you have to buy that specific car from this specific person that I'm going to put you in contact with. And you're going to have to pay 10,000 euros for it. What your friend doesn't know is that you've actually paid 3 million euros for that car, and you're going to
3,000 euros
I
for
fucked
the
up
car.
the metaphor here.
Yes, no, yeah,
but you're going to take a 70% profit on the sale of this car. So you're cheating your friend. Now, this is what Cheng Chen was doing. So he was aware that Cifidex had not even bought this wind farm in Montenegro yet, but if he could convince the board of NM Malta to agree to paying 11 million euros for this wind farm, Cifidex would then go to Montenegro, buy this wind farm for 3 million euros, and then sell it to NM Malta for the agreed price of 11 million euros.
Okay. Now, who's Cifidex really, and how did Cifidex get its money and everything else?
Cifidex is really, we seem to have found out, controlled by one of the directors of Electrogas, Tħabbeb Magħna. He's from Azerbaijan. He was a close associate of Yorgen Fenech, And yes, he seems to have controlled Cifidex. So he, via Yorgen Fenech, used this relationship with the Maltese government to again persuade not just NM Malta, but also the Office of the Prime Minister that it made sense to overpay by almost 80% for this wind farm in Montenegro.
And how does Yorgen Fenech come into this?
Yorgen Fenech, the evidence shows, made a payment of 3 million euros to Cifidex. Cifidex used that money to buy the wind farm in Montenegro, then received the payment of 11 million euros from NM Malta, and kicked 4.6 million euros back to Yorgen Fenech.
Okay. So did Yorgen Fenech make 1.6 million on that deal?
No, he actually made a profit of the money that he loaned to Electrogas plus the 4.6 million euros.
Shit. All right. It's a good deal.
Sorry, so it would be the investment of 3 or 3.4 or whatever it was, million euros, for a profit of 4.6 million.
Okay, so he made 4.6 on top of the
Yes, money was redistributed in other ways, so the total amount was actually much higher than that. But some of it was redistributed. So there was some money that was kept by Cifidex.
Cool. And what would compel the Maltese government to accept such a ludicrous deal?
Bribery. This is at the heart of it. When there is no economic rationale for a deal that the government has entered into, there are two possible explanations: stupidity and bribery. So the government for many years has been telling us that Konrad Mizzi is the cleverest person to ever walk into cabinet office. So it cannot say that stupidity was the reason that he entered into these deals. The only option left is bribery. There's no other explanation.
And it's because Konrad Mizzi signed off on this deal, right?
Ultimately, it was Joseph Muscat's baby, let's say. Joseph Muscat was there at the inauguration in Montenegro. In photos that you see released by the Department of Information, it's Joseph Muscat with the Prime Minister of Montenegro, our ambassador to Montenegro, and so on. So he bears responsibility for this. But it was Konrad Mizzi who was the, let's say, project manager of this deal from the government side. He was in fact responsible for Project Malta.
And
that
Project
was the
Malta
vehicle that he used for this kind of dealing.
And Project Malta is what exactly? It's like an umbrella.
It is the vehicle that the government used for private-public partnerships. So Konrad Mizzi was originally Minister of Energy. After the Panama Papers, Joseph Muscat said that he stripped him of this position. In reality, he made him Minister of Public-Private Partnerships. So he retained responsibility for these kinds of deals.
Perhaps sounds a bit more dangerous to have a guy like that in
Well,
these
of course.
very delicate deals.
Well, of course.
You have this habit of like trolling Konrad Mizzi, telling him he's going to go to jail. Do you believe it, or is it just like you're trying to get under the skin of the slippery cunt?
No, I do believe that Konrad Mizzi is going to go to jail. No one, apart from a few crazy people, think that Konrad Mizzi is not corrupt.